Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth season of the Big East Rewind. I'm still your host, that 7 foot tall Chuck Everson from Villanova, and my partner, the same guy as always, the same lovable dentist from Syracuse University, our own Dr. Sonny Sparrow. How are you, Sonny?
I'm great, Chuck. You might get in trouble for using the word lovable and dentist in the same sentence. I'm
Well,
just
you know what? You're a
throwing it out there,
pain-free
man.
guy. I've been to your office. I know what you do over there.
Just
It's
throwing it out there, man.
pain-free. It's nice. You're very nice
Thank
to
you.
me. All right. So, hey, listen, Sonny, it's a big season this year in the Big East as we start off our fourth season. It's a big year. It's the 45th anniversary of the conference itself, and it's a special year for our guests and myself. We're going to talk about this probably over a couple of episodes with different guys, but right now we're going to start off with the coaches. It's the 40th anniversary this year, Sonny, of the '85 championship team. The big victory over the Georgetown Hoyas, our buddies now, 40 years ago, which I can't even believe that I'm saying those words. It's unbelievable that it's that long.
You know what's great? I mean, we have, three of the four coaches are here. It's I'm sure it's difficult when Coach Mass passed for all of you in your own ways. I know Chuck's talked about it openly a lot of times, and I'm sure that he had such an impact in everybody's life. But we've got three of the coaches that were there. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. It's
We
40
we
years
have
ago.
we have the surviving members of the coaching staff. We're missing, of course, Harry Booth and of course Coach Massimino. But with us today, live and in person, is our whole staff. First of all, Mitch Buonaguro, who was a coach over at Fairfield and Siena after his time at Villanova. He was at Villanova from 1977 to 85, and then he went over to Fairfield. Coach B is here with us. How are you, Mitch?
I'm doing well, Chuck. I'm breathing. So as Pete Gillen
That's good.
tells
And
me
you
every
look
day.
great, by the way. We talked off air, but you look great, man. So keep up doing what you're doing.
What did Coach Gillen say to you?
His line every day when I talk to Pete Gillen twice a week, and he tells me every day is a gift, Mitch. Every day is a gift. So that's a pretty good line. It really is. Because a lot of our friends are not,
right?
A lot of the coaches. I couldn't believe it. I went back and looked at the coaches that we coached against in the NCAA tournament, and the only one alive is Bill Frieda. All the rest of them are, passed away. Thompson,
Yeah.
Dana Kirk, Lefty. It's unbelievable. Don Donaher,
Wow.
Steve Smith. I mean, we're getting old, Chuck. As they say.
Yeah.
We're getting old.
Well, also with us today from that staff, and he went on to be a head coach as well at Canisius, and he was at Villanova from 79 to 87. Coach Marty Marbach's with us. How are you, Mart?
I'm doing great. And you can tell by Mitch's hair and my hair that we lost a lot more games than Steve, because he still has his full hair. So
Yep. No, that's
it's
true.
It's good to be with you guys. I mean, Chuck, you've done a great job keeping us all together. And 40, can't believe it's been 40 years. And as Mitch said, I'm blessed every day. My life is good. So looking forward to going back down memory lane with you guys.
And last but certainly not least, he was the rookie coach on this team. And I want to get I want to really hear from this guy on going from, the rookie guy to being a head coach in all these different places he's been at. He was with us from 1984, 85 to 1988. He went and coached at Manhattan, came back to Villanova, and was the head coach for a lot of years at Villanova, and finished his coaching career at UMass, now with CBS Sports. Coach Steve Lappas. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing great. And you say 40 years. It's just unbelievable how quickly those 40 years went. But you talk about the memory of a lifetime, and we kind of knew it that night that we were going to share something special for a long time, and we certainly have, and we'll continue as long as we can.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's been some ride. And what's funny is, people still come up, people of a certain age now, right, guys, because we're all getting older, but people come up to me and they ask me, how tall are you? And they say, where did you play? You had to play basketball. And once you tell them Villanova, everybody can tell me where they were and who they were with the night that we played that game and won and beat Georgetown. Does that happen to you guys too? Do you hear stuff like that?
I
Well,
hear it all the time. I mean, Chuck, I hear it all the time. And I mean, I live in Saratoga, upstate New York, right near, and I coached at Siena, and up here, in upstate New York. I mean, there are so many people that remember that game. I mean, it's like we became like America's team that night. I mean, and it's lasted all these years. It's incredible.
Mitch,
Well,
you think it was because Villanova won, or because they were glad to see Georgetown lose? Upstate New York has a certain passion against Georgetown, so
Well, I think anytime you're a Cinderella, you're an underdog. I think that the prevailing mood is that you root for the underdog. I think that night, and Steve and Marty might make comment about this. I thought as the game went on, the crowd in Rupp Arena that night really started rooting for us. I thought it became like almost like a home court advantage. I mean, our guys, like everyone in that arena I mean, Georgetown had people that they had their own fans, but I thought we had predominantly the crowd that night, and that helped us because the game came down to the last few minutes. We hung in and we made some plays down the stretch, but I think a lot of people were rooting for us that night, not only on TV but in the arena at the game.
Well,
you see that all the time. When I'm doing the NCAA tournament, like when I did the FDU Purdue game last year, it was a flat out road game for Purdue. FDU had every person in that arena going for them. And that's kind of how it was that night. Everybody that I've met, everybody remembers. It's amazing how many people remember the game, but there are a lot of people that were rooting for us, and there were a lot of people that were Georgetown people that don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I've done Patrick Ewing's games over the years when he was coaching at Georgetown. That was one subject we never came near because I knew how he felt about it. Because he said most disappointing loss of his career was that, and the 7th game when they played when he was with the Knicks. When they lost in the 7th game to
Houston against Houston.
Yeah. So but that's up. The 85 game is right there.
Yeah.
Well, we had 20 people in Syracuse that were on your side, believe me.
And like Steve said, it's not just Villanovans that you run into. It's almost as if that between Coach Mass, the perfect game, the underdog small Catholic school against the big bad Georgetown Hoyas, and then the perfect game, shooting 80%. I think it's just like seared into everybody's memory who was a sports fan, and they automatically go right to that game. That's like Steve said, about 40 years going by in a flash, but people right away, even recently, if you run into somebody, oh yeah, I was at Villanova, you were assistant. Oh, Georgetown game, oh my goodness, it's unbelievable, that game. And you don't find that very often.
I mean, you mentioned it. There's so many levels of this that you can identify with, even if you're not a sports fan. Like the underdog, the Cinderella, the perfect game, the personalities, the good versus bad, everything.
And Sonny, not only that, it's who we beat. People don't realize that team, had they beaten us that night, would be considered one of the best college basketball teams of all time.
Right.
So that's what they were on the verge of accomplishing had they beaten us that night. Now, they get a little shortchanged because they lost that game by 2 points, but that team they held people to 34% field goal percentage for the season, and we go and shoot 79%. So, yes,
that's the point. I mean,
we shot unbelievable, but we shot unbelievable against a team that was like the best defensive team, one of the best ones ever.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
No, it's very true. I got to ask you, you're 3 seniors on that 1985 team. So this is going to be for Mitch and Marty. Talk about recruiting Eddie, Gary, and Dwayne.
So I'll have to defer to Mitch. At the time before Paul Cormier had left, the third assistant, the only recruiting I would have done would have been by letter or by calls or hosting them when they came. So the in-person visiting would have been Mitch Buonaguro and Paul Cormier at that time. So I'll let Mitch go, but I can tell you this, just in terms of the phone calls and the letter writing and the hosting, we didn't leave any stone unturned. The one thing that I did do is we met with the Villanova radio crew, and we actually made like these fake tapes, and we injected like Dwayne McClain, making the winning basket, to win the game and things like that. So I was more I was more behind the scenes in terms of the recruitment of those three. So I'll let Mitch take it from
before you jump in, Mitch. I got to dovetail on what Marty just said. Albie Oxenreiter, who is Ox on Fox in Pittsburgh,
right,
did that tape. So the deal was with the particular tape that you're talking about. This is really amazing, and Albie talks to me about this all the time. He had Dwayne McLain as a senior being the high scorer in Lexington, Kentucky, and us beating Georgetown by 2 on that tape. So, that was pretty, he must have been like the Nostradamus of his time back then, but that was the tape he put together.
Can we get some numbers from this guy?
Yeah. Oh, he's good. He's good. So go ahead, Mitch. How did you get these guys?
Just pick 3. Give me 3 numbers.
Yeah.
What happened was that in the summer, August session of 5-star in 1980, Honesdale, that's where all the good East Coast kids went. It was the August Honesdale session, 1980. They were going into their senior year, the 3 of them. They were all at the camp together. And I was there working. Now, that was at the time where the college coaches were really getting upset they called them Garf's guys, the guys that were working the camp, because we had a little bit of an advantage. We were around the kids. Not that I recruited them that week, but the 3 of them were there. And Eddie, Gary, and Dwayne, I think, spoke at the camp about going to school together. They kind of made like a pact, they remember they called themselves the expansion crew. Marty, remember when they came, the expansion crew?
Yes.
Well, they had kind of recruited themselves at 5-star. And then we got, this is a crazy story. Eddie Pinckney, I think if you asked Eddie, he originally wanted to go to Providence.
He was committed.
He pretty much committed to Gary Walters. And I can't believe this story. I think Gary Walters, for some reason, told him to go to Villanova. That's a story I heard later. It was what it was. The story. It was a crazy story, but
yeah, that's crazy.
On that,
that's insane.
That's insane.
Imagine that Steve telling Eddie Pinckney to go to another school. I mean, another Big East school. So we jumped in on him, and I'll tell you what Rolly did, which was it was really smart. We were the only 2 coaches, he and I, that went to. He lived in. Steve might be aware of he lived in the Monroe Projects in the South Bronx.
In Soundview.
Eddie grew up in a tough area. And I believe Rolly and I were the only 2 people that went to the apartment and spoke to his mother and father. And Rolly did a masterful job, Sonny, in the meeting. What Rolly would do with mothers particularly would really sell academics. And Eddie's mother was a nurse. She was bright, and he had 6 sisters. And I think they all went to college. I think Eddie was from a family where education was important. Now, remember, Houston went after him. I don't know if you knew this. But Guy Lewis went after him and really put some really illegal stuff on the table. He turned down a lot of money, Eddie, to go to Villanova because his mother loved Rolly. When Rolly left to visit, Eddie told me later that the mother told him, "You're going to Villanova. You're playing for Coach Massimino." So the Eddie Pinckney thing it fell in our lap. I mean, we got lucky in the sense that he turned down Providence, or Barry Walters turned him down, which is an incredible story. And then Dwayne and Gary, I think, wanted to play with Eddie. Tell you, Dwayne McLain was a hell of a player, high school player. He was a big-time player. I mean, when I went up to see him, he was getting 30, 35 a game. He could really play, Dwayne. And Gary was underrated. He was a really good point guard. So the 3 of them together made this pact, Chuck and Sonny, and I think we got lucky. They all wanted to go to school together. We recruited them hard, and they came. They were great.
So Eddie's the first domino, right? And then the next 2, because Dwayne was playing up in the the Northeast there in the Patrick Ewing country, right? Same time.
Worcester, Mass.
Yeah,
Worcester.
Played up in Methuen, Mass. Gary McLain. He played for another 5-star guy, Bill Donlin. I don't know if you guys remember Bill Donlin.
Bill Donlin. Yep, he was at Providence for a while, right, Mitch?
Yeah,
he was
just a good guy. Really, his son is his son's the assistant in Clemson now. Really good, good coach. He's the head coach at Missouri, Kansas City. But Bill Donlin helped us, and then Rolly was great with Dwayne's mother. Marty, you remember the mother came down, on the visit. Rolly did a great job with us. So Rolly was very good in the home. He the parents loved him. I mean, because he talked a lot about, I'm gonna be, there for your son. I'm gonna get him his degree. And parents, especially the Pinckneys who were well educated, that resonated with them.
Yeah. And listen, he hooked a lot of parents with that, and it was no nonsense. At the end of the day, we were all with them right till the very end, right? So it was no BS, that's for sure.
One more question: did all three visit together by any chance?
I don't think they did.
Did they, Marty? I don't think they did.
No.
I don't think they did, Sonny, because I think with Eddie Pinckney, we had everyone came. His high school coach was very involved. A guy named Steve Post.
Yeah.
I don't know if you, Steve, you remember him.
He's still around. Yep.
He really helped.
We played against them in high school. Adley Stevenson, him and Freddie Brown when he was a junior.
And Rolly was very good at recruiting recruiting high school coaches. He got the coaches. He got like Steve Post. He got the coach, Dwayne's coach. Bill Donlin was very involved. So we recruited everyone. We were we were smart in the sense that we just didn't recruit the kid.
Right.
Recruited the coach, the parents. Rolly had everyone down in the visit. Rolly was a great recruit.
That's the family, right? That's the family motto right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
So guys, we start our preseason workouts and we get into everything. What are the expectations of the coaching staff at that point? What were you guys thinking? And Steve, you in particular, what were you thinking coming into that right out of high school, right out of coaching high school to coming into these workouts with these guys?
I didn't know where I was, to be honest with you. I mean, I was there that first year. It was thread the tape, get them sneakers, get some coffee, drive and get some cheese for Coach Mass. I'm not saying that I wasn't involved, but I didn't, you find out when you go from high school to college, you really find out what you don't know. And I remember sitting in our first meeting with Marty and Mitch and Coach Mass. Now, Coach Mass was an X and O genius. Yeah. So he would take out that whiteboard and he'd start diagramming stuff. And Marty and Mitch know exactly what he's doing. And he'd erase it. And by the time he erased it, I didn't know where the first pass was going. That's literally how much I knew about basketball when he hired me. So for me, every day was a learning day. Every day. I had never been through this before. I played Division III basketball. I never played Division I. So for me, I was like leaning on Marty and Mitch and, you know what I mean, to kind of guide me. And they would tell me what to do because I actually took over Marty's job. So Marty was now on the road recruiting. And so, I was a deer in the headlights.
Marty's car too, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Right?
The 67 Chevy.
Holy smokes, that thing was Marty beat that up pretty good. I know that.
Hey Coach, were you the salt and pepper shakers or were you the sugar cat packets? Which were you on the diagram? Yeah.
I was nothing. I didn't know what they were talking about half the time. So the learning curve for me that year was extremely high. But I knew what I didn't know, and I didn't go there trying to be some kind of. And Rolly would tell me, I'll never forget. He'd say, "What are you, high school Harry?" That's what he'd call me. You're high school Harry. You know what I mean? Or the first time we went to dinner, Mitch and his wife, Marty and his wife, and Harry Booth and his wife, and Coach Mass and Mary Jane. He's sitting next to me at the table. He goes, "I want to tell you something. You just went from being Mickey Mouse to Mickey Mantle," and he was 100% right.
That's great. So at that point, what were the expectations, Mitch? What was Coach talking about? What were you guys hoping for that season when it started out? Did you have any big visions of grandeur, or was it one of those things that let's see where everything happens?
Well, Chuck, if Rolly was on this meeting, he'd tell you first. Rolly would tell you his best team that he coached at Villanova was the 83 team.
I agree.
That lost to Akeem Olajuwon with Pinckney and Pinot. That was
100% agree with you.
We were as good as anyone in the country, but we couldn't, we didn't match up well with Houston. So the year after Eddie's junior year, we had a good year. We lost in the second, but remember in Eddie's junior year, we started the year, Marty, you remember this, 3-7. we didn't start well Eddie's junior year.
Yeah.
And we had to come back and make a run at Chuck. You remember we had to make a run at the end and got in the tournament.
Yeah.
I would say going into Eddie's senior year, the three seniors, the expectations were high. But clearly St. John's and Georgetown, I thought going into the season were better, had better talent. They were,
two in the country, right?
And, so we were in that third, fourth. I thought we'd probably be third or fourth. We wound up third. We lost 7 Big East games. But what happened was I think we had a lull at the end of the year. We started the year well. I remember we were 9-1. Remember, Marty, we lost to Georgia. It was our first loss.
Yeah.
We got into Big East play. We won our first 2 Big East, but then we were a little up and down. We lost 6 of our last 11 games. And then the Pittsburgh game, the famous game where Rollie sat the 5 starters. Remember, we lost by 23 the last game of the year. So we had to beat. That's what's amazing about this season. We really had to beat Pitt, I think. There was a lot of pressure to beat Pitt to get in the tournament. Rollie felt a lot of pressure that we all did, but we beat Pitt in the opening round and that got us in. We lost to St. John's. So we went in 19-10. We're a 10-loss team. We weren't ranked. So
you didn't hit that 20 mark, and 20 was usually the golden mark to get into the NCAA.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we were an 8 seed, and we had to play Dayton at Dayton in the first round, so we got no respect. But I thought we were. Look, Pinckney had those guys, those seniors had been to 2 Final 8s. They had been to the second round of the tournament their junior year. The NCAA, whoever we played, they were not going to be intimidated. And Rollie had never lost a first round game.
Yeah,
like
that's one thing.
Years I was there. Yeah, Chuck, he'd be 7-0 in the opening round. So arguably our toughest game was the Dayton game. We could have very easily lost the Dayton game.
Well,
right?
Before we get into the Dayton game, Mitch, let's talk about the Pitt game first, because that, I think, from my perspective, I think that might have been the turning point of the entire season, especially late in the year. We lost 10 games. 5 of them were to either the number 1 or number 2 ranked teams in the country in Georgetown and St. John's. We lose to Maryland with Lenny. We lose to Syracuse with Sonny. We lose to Georgia instead, and now Pittsburgh. So, going into that game, nobody expected that to happen. And when it did, when you guys are riding the bus and, you guys are all up in the front of the bus, were you guys like, oh, we're sunk, we're in big trouble? Or what was going on at that point with the coaching staff?
Well, I mean, the craziest thing about that game that I remember is that the practices leading up to that game may have been the best practices of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, we played, the practices were hard, guys were working. We thought scouting wise, practice wise, that, we were in really good shape for the game. I mean, that's how basketball is, though. I mean, and then we came out and we were flat, and then Rollie went after him and we lose the game. And that was obviously a really low point of the season, because as you talked about, like with Mitch, we had a great start. The Big East was a bear, in terms of, BC, all those teams. But the Pitt game, after the Pitt game, I think that was obviously the lowest point of the year. But Rollie being Rollie, he wasn't going to let anybody, put their tail between the legs. We went right back to work. I mean, we just went right back to work. The scouting was good. And the preparation, I knew that from the outside, the alums and away from the team, even the press, I think we believed internally that we did have to beat Pitt in the first round to have a chance of getting to the NCAA tournament. And so, but Rollie's at his best, whether it's preparation for an NCAA game. If there's one game, I can remember even playing against Bobby Knight in the Holiday Festival in New York City. When there's a big game, I wouldn't have had any other coach Coach Mass, I think, was the best in preparing for one game with a certain number of days. So the season ends. Now we have a few days to get ready. Big East tournament. Rollie just had the team really ready. And even though we didn't play awesome, I think we won like 69-61. But winning that game, I think, just took all the pressure off, because I think we felt if we beat them, we would have a chance. Of course, then we run into St. John's, who drilled us by about 15 in the next game. But yeah, so that Pitt game was memorable for the wrong reason, but I think it did spur, it did give us a second life, and we took advantage of it.
But I think I see one thing that happens all the time. People talk about being hot going into the NCAA tournament, and I always say you really want to get hot in the NCAA tournament. And though I agree with you guys, I think winning that game at Dayton was, to win on the road like that, close game, basically at the buzzer. I think the momentum that gave us, we needed the Pitt game to get in the tournament, but I think our momentum was really forged from that Dayton game. And then winning that game at the buzzer. And you see it happen all the time. I see teams come into the NCAA tournament cold, and they win a game that they're not supposed to win late, and all of a sudden they go on this unbelievable run. And so I do agree we needed that game to get in, but I think the momentum that was created by that Dayton game was really huge.
I agree. Here's the thing, about one last thing on the Pitt game. How ballsy was it of Coach Mass to say, I'm sitting the first crew down. You got 2 minutes to play, and if you don't come out and play. Now, he knew we were a bubble team. He knew all of that going in.
That was a CBS game too, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the only time CBS gave the Chevrolet player of the game to the second team. I've never seen that before.
And in those days, it's not like now where they're springing 100 games on every night. There weren't 100 games on. There was probably one. That's the only game probably that weekend on CBS.
Yeah, CBS had their weekend games, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah.
I just thought that took a lot of guts to make that statement and back it up. He did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Chuck, one last thing on the Rolly bench and everyone. I think Rolly did some things during those 3 weeks that were really great coaching moves. I actually thought it was a great move sitting those guys. First off, he had a senior team. I don't know if you do that with freshmen aside, then you really kill it. But he had 3 veteran players that had been through, 90 games. So, when he did it, that was in the back of his mind. These guys are going to respond. Pinckney, McClain, that he when he did it and he had the pulse of the team, he knew the next week, like Marty said, we were going to prepare. We had good kids. The 3 seniors didn't want to go out that way. So I actually thought it was a great coaching move. I know we were on the fence, we were on the bubble, but when I look back on it, it also, like the Dayton game, Steve, I don't know if you remember this, but he met with Harold Jensen, Chuck.
Yeah.
In his room the day before the Dayton game. And he said to Harold, he said, look, in this tournament, you got to shoot. Remember, Harold had a shaky year. He was up and down. He had some games where he was hard. But Rolly sat him down and said, Harold, we need you to shoot the ball. Don't hesitate. And we don't win the tournament without Harold. He had a great game against Georgetown.
Yeah.
He had a great game against Carolina.
Well, I don't want to say too much, but he did visit Syracuse. I was his host. You're welcome.
Yeah, well, that's true. He went from be cautious. His mindset was be cautious to go for it. And then he made that layup, and everybody on the bench, I remember everybody getting up on the bench going, what are you doing? And he came in and the thing hit every part of the rim and finally rolled in. And that was the end of the game for us. That was, that's how we won that game. He doesn't do that. He doesn't become Harold Jensen, so speaking to him, let's stick on that for a second. And Mart, I'm curious to hear what you think. I know Coach Mass is superstitious. He wore the blue suit the first game of the weekend. He wore the tan suit the second game of the weekend. When Jensen came out like that against Dayton, was it predetermined because of his superstition, or was it something that he just felt as a coach that 4 minutes into the game, he was taking Dwight out and he was putting HJ in?
Well, for me, going to Mitch's, I thought Coach Mass throughout the tournament did a lot of non-X and O decision-making, whether it be the spaghetti talk in North Carolina or the talk before the Georgetown game, at the pregame meal. And then just talking to Harold Jensen in terms of giving him his confidence. I don't think he went into that game from a scouting report. Although I don't remember it as a staff that Rolly had this plan that, I'm going to put Harold Jensen in the Dayton game, right away. I just think that I don't think Dwight got off to a great start, and he went with Harold.
Right.
And then I got to give Harold all the credit in the world. He played with confidence. I mean, so Harold Presley makes the big steal. So we're up one. Dayton has the ball. Harold Presley gets the steal. And now the next possession, Roley's going, we got enough. And then Jensen sees the opening and he just goes in for the layup. And I think that confidence just carried through because the rest of the tournament, Dwight still started, but coach was ready to go with Harold just because, we were a defensive team. So we really needed some offense. And obviously in the final, Harold was unbelievable. But yeah, I just think that was that talk he had with Harold was just another example of a non-X and O decision that made Coach Mass great.
Yeah, I agree. He did a lot of unorthodox things, like you said. And it's funny because to this day, I still think about some of the things he said, even to me, like he knew what buttons to push on each guy's. Mitch, you made the point earlier. He had 3 seniors running the show. He knew they were going to respond. They weren't going to go in the tank, to use his words, He knew that they would respond. And same thing with HJ. I think he knew Jens was going to respond, from being challenged the way he was challenged.
But that's got to go back to that conversation. When a coach believes in you as a player and they express it, you don't want to let your coach down.
Oh yeah,
that's that personal connection. That's more motivating than anything in the world.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
if you don't have that relationship, that doesn't work, right, guys?
Well, he was an emotional guy who understood emotions. And, and that's an important thing. And there are a lot of coaches out there that don't understand emotions, believe it or not.
That's true.
He did. And so he was able to tap into those things. And, nothing is better for a player than for a coach, especially a coach who's emotionally connected. Because let's face it, Coach Mass was so emotionally connected to his players. And so they looked at him like he was a father. So when he talked to you in his office by yourself, it was like your father talking to you. But he had a way of doing it to make you feel good about yourself and not to gain something from it. Whereas sometimes it can work the other way if the guy doesn't know how to communicate those things. He knew how to communicate.
I think it goes back to like what Chuck was saying, though. If you have that relationship, right, you can withdraw a little bit out of that, but you're making deposits all along the way. And like you said, understanding emotions. You're not just the crazy Italian on the sidelines.
No,
you get it.
Far from that.
Right, you get it. You understand it on a deeper level.
And then
So,
Chuck,
go ahead, Mark.
So even though I just said the non-X's and O's were so important, I felt as an assistant, and I'm sure, Steve and Mitch felt the same way, and I know the team felt that way, but Roley's X's and O's in the tournament instilled so much confidence in the staff and the team. Like the way it was presented, sure, the assistants, Steve, myself, and Mitch had all the videotapes and the scouting reports, but how he put that into the practices, I mean, I'll never forget. So we're playing Michigan, number 1 seed. He had us look at Michigan's tapes in the Big Ten to see if they had played against any like matchup zones. And so they really hadn't. Michigan State was probably the only one. So Michigan being young, us using our matchup zones. So that, X and O. Maryland, Lenny Bias in his entire career never had less than 10 points. Well, in the NCAA tournament, it was the only time that Len Bias was held under, 10 points with the matchup zone. I mean, I can go on, but the X, you can't, the confidence that the team had also did have a lot to do with his X's and O's and his preparation for each game.
Some of the things like you're talking about, Marty, to dovetail on what you're saying. I remember playing 5-on-7 when we were getting ready for the Georgetown press. We had 7 or 8 guys on the floor playing defense against the blue team to kind of emulate their pressure and how quick they were and how lengthy they were to get to the ball. Different things like that he did were unbelievable.
Well, the funny thing you say about that is, I'm not getting off subject, but when you talk about Georgetown's pressure, like everybody keeps referring to the Villanova perfect game. Well, I don't think people realize we had 17 turnovers in that game. That's number 1. And number 2, Georgetown's decision to go to a zone instead of, pressuring us, late in the game, I thought was a big factor, in terms of, the Georgetown pressure, I think really did affect us. Them going zone at the end when we worked the ball and Jensen made the foul shot. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I'm getting excited. It makes me really miss. I know it sounds corny. I really, really miss being with Steve and Mitch and the coaching part of it, the teamwork, putting it together and the relationships with the players. There's nothing that can be replicated like in my life ever since then.
Yep.
Chuck, did you work on the press in the parking lot or did you work on it in the hotel lobby? Where'd you work on that?
It's funny, and I was gonna get to that. I'm glad you jumped in on that. Who had the scout for Georgetown? Was it Mitch? Did you have the scout?
Yep.
Mitch.
So Mitch, did you have the first 2 games that we played them too?
Yeah. Yep.
So you did all 3 Georgetown games.
Chuck, the 2 games that we lost in the regular season was 52-50 in overtime. We
Right.
should have won that game. We actually should have won the first game. We lost 52-50. The second game, we lost 57-50. So both games, we held them under 60. To this day, I mean, Rolly never said it, but to any media, but he said it to Marty, Steve, and I a lot. He would much rather have played Georgetown than St. John's.
Because
he said that.
Because Georgetown, because the one thing in those days, shooting wasn't that important because there was no 3-point line. So Georgetown had no real shooters, and St. John's had that guy Mullen.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, no shot clock.
No shot clock.
Against a matchup zone,
Right.
you try to drive it, you're in trouble. You got to make some shots. And Georgetown didn't have any shot makers. And that was, much rather play Georgetown.
If you remember that what Rolly did a lot of, Chuck, in the championship game with Georgetown, is he always had 3 guys around Ewing. So like a couple of times I remember, he would yell it out, special. So we're showing zone and then all of a sudden we're man. And he's got Presley and Pinckney, Ewing. Like I remember Rolly saying before the game, you guys remember this, no lobs, no alley-oops. He got one right at the beginning of the game. I think he got one, and then he didn't get another one. The rest of the game. That was a big Sonny. That was a big part of the game plan. No, because Ewing used to get 5 alley-oops a game. He was great at that.
Yeah.
And Jackson used to throw it up to him.
I mean,
he only got one in the whole game, and that was part of the scouting report. But the kids, like Marty said, were so well prepared. And Rolly was a guy when you went at Rolly and you watched a lot of film, he would listen to you.
Yeah.
Like I would say to him, Rolly, let's go orange to double because they're putting, he would listen to you because he knew you watched 20 hours of tape, 30 hours of tape. I mean, he knew we worked at those scouting reports. Sometimes the head coach doesn't listen to you.
How about the baseline out of bounds pass?
Like that stuff was put in. I remember, Mitch, that stuff was put in the parking lot of the Ramada Inn. I remember 2 things and correct me if I'm wrong. The first thing was, like you just said, we sent weak side help onto Patrick because he never looked opposite. He used to kick it back out to the wing. It was on his side. He never turned and looked opposite. So we had that guy come double down and sometimes 3 guys around him. And the other thing was the press break. I don't remember us ever using that until that game where we had somebody step out of bounds and then come in. And they didn't know what to do with that. Those guys have talked about it right here with us, with Sonny and I, that they didn't know what the heck we were doing.
Well, the other thing, Chuck, and the unsung hero of the tournament was Gary McLain. I mean, everybody talks about Pinckney, McClain, and certainly they should, but Sonny, how about McClain in the 6 games? Now, this is playing 38 minutes a game. He's getting pressured, playing against great play. He only had 7 turnovers in the entire tournament, 6 games.
That's unbelievable.
Georgetown, he only had 2. So Gary McLain, I mean, really should get a ton of credit for us winning the thing. He handled the ball. He got the guys the ball. He was tough as nails, and he made free throws. I remember in the big games in the tournament, he got fouled a lot because he had the ball. But he was incredible in those 6 games. Gary McLain.
Probably a big part of Georgetown's scout, right? Was listen, he's not turning the ball over. Let's change our pressure defense philosophy.
I mean, that's great. That's
Marty, you made a good point, though. We turned it over 17 times. We turned the ball over a lot in that game, in the Georgetown game.
Yeah,
but we didn't turn it over at the end. We turned it over, Sonny, during first half. I think Jensen had 6 turnovers that game. You know,
I mean,
he
that's
was
a great point about Gary from the standpoint that we really didn't have a backup point guard, a true one.
Right.
I mean, Dwight Wilbur could handle the ball, but Gary had to play almost the whole game.
Yeah.
Had to stay healthy, couldn't get in foul trouble. And so to Mitch's point, probably an unsung guy. But I did want to go back just briefly to what Steve said about Chris Mullin, because I think all of us would agree that if we played, there would have never been this perfect game. There would never been this whole 40-year thing if we drew St. John's in the semifinal and Memphis had Georgetown, because I think St. John's would have had a good chance of beating us. So us drawing Memphis helped us so much to avoid St. John's. Plus, with Rolly's matchup zone, Memphis didn't know what was going on.
They were lost.
You know, it's a great
They were
point,
lost.
Lap. That's a great point.
They were lost. You're right.
They were lost. And you know what? The funny thing is, I have to tell you a quick story. So Coach Massimino was like a mad scientist with these defenses, and he'd love it. I remember Marty and Mitch, he'd turn to us on the bench and he'd be so happy. He said, they have no idea what we're doing. He loved saying that. So I'll tell you this quick story. So when we played Kentucky in I'm going off target a little bit, in 1988 to go to the Elite Eight, they had whatchamacallit, Winston Bennett and the guy now who writing the books, Rex Chapman. Anyway,
Yeah.
so James Dickey was an assistant on that staff. So every time I would see him on the road after that game for the next 10 years, he'd say, what'd you guys do that game? What were you? He asked me every time. So now I don't see him for another. I have his game when he's at Houston in 2015. So I'm with Andrew Catalan. I'm walking into the gym for shoot around. And I said, Andrew, watch. James Dickey's going to ask me, what the hell were you guys doing that game? As soon as he sees me, he says, what the hell did you do to us in that game? This is 25 years later. So that's what Rolly had the ability to do to people. Now, he did it to everybody along the way. Georgetown was a little tough because Thompson knew us and he knew Thompson. But the fact that they weren't a good shooting team was right up our alley. And I don't know what you guys think, Marty and Mitch. I tell people all the time off the record, I said, I'm so glad they call it the greatest upset of all time. But we didn't think it was that great an upset, did we? Did you think it was? I mean, you look at the games that you talked about. And did the year before I get there, didn't you guys beat them down there? Happy Dobbs made a shot or something. You guys
Dwight made a shot at the cap.
At the cap center. So, I mean, everybody says the upset of all time, but I sit there and say, we didn't think so.
Well, honestly, for me, I know we were a 9.5 dog, and I thought we were gonna have to play perfectly to have a chance. I think we were not only facing, sure, the guys were confident, the seniors especially. We thought we could have won, like Mitch said, those games. But we're talking about, as you mentioned, Lap, about historic. So you have Georgetown going for history against Villanova, and I wasn't as confident, let's say, as the team was or as Rolly was. I mean, I was confident that we'd be prepared, but I couldn't believe it, honestly. I mean, it was like too crazy to me that we beat them.
You'd give the 9.5 points?
What's that?
Would you have given the 9.5?
Today I would have taken them, but there was a reason we were 9.5 dogs. The bookmakers are usually right.
Well, we also have to keep in mind we shot 79%. We won by.
Well, yeah, you don't usually shoot almost 80% and lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I remember distinctly going into pregame and having Coach talk to us, and I think what he said was perfect. Play the game to win instead of playing not to lose, and anybody can beat anybody on one night. And I think that was the exact perfect thing to say, because I know everybody took that seriously and came out. And Prez threw that first shot up over his head, Coach, and I said, it's going to be a good night now. Prez put that thing in. I was like, this could be good.
I thought what he said about Al Severance, that Al Severance is going to be up at the rim knocking their shots away. He didn't do a great job knocking their shots, but we made shots.
Right, he put them in for us. Yeah, right.
Chuck, you have to take some credit, because this is one of those non-X and O moments that I thought, well, I mean, it wasn't like a big deal, but was a deal. Was you being in the game with like 30 seconds to go in the half and Martin smacking you across the face near the buzzer. Why there wasn't a foul, I have no idea.
Yeah, Reggie. Yeah.
Seeing Roley, seeing Coach Mass run off the field, run off the court, coming into the locker room, that moment sort of like I mean, it was a close game, but energized that room to a point where I really felt that you actually had a nice part in that game. So
Thanks. You know, it was funny because when that all went down, we go in the locker room we win the game, and now we're in the locker room. I got 40 reporters in front. I go, what the hell do you want to talk to me for? He played 3.5 minutes. Well, you know, what am I going to tell you? So they all wanted to know what happened with Reggie, and I've milked that now for 40 years. I don't know how much more I can get out of that, guys. You know, it's been a long time. And Reggie and I have become pretty good buddies too. And I talked to him.
Welcome to Peace Pipe.
Yeah, we smoked the peace pipe. Yeah. So let me ask you this. So now we're in this game. You know, they are without. I mean, they weren't without flaws, guys. I mean, because we've had the Georgetown guys on, and the couple of things that they said that they screwed up that we took advantage of was Reggie was on fire at the beginning of that game, and then he rolled his ankle on the baseline, and Thompson took forever to put him back in the game. He was pleading with Thompson to put him back in, and Thompson wouldn't put him back in. He was, you know, I don't know what reason. He got his ankle retaped. He was ready to get back in. It was a national championship game, the last one of the year, and Thompson never put him back in. I think that hurt us because he went on a run there for a few minutes there in the first half.
Well, Chuck, the one guy that could shoot was Reggie Williams. I mean, if you look at their team, I don't think they had a really consistent shooter other than Williams.
Mike Jackson was Mike Jackson could shoot it a little bit, no?
Yeah, but he didn't take a lot of shots. He was
more. Well, that's true.
They were streaky, those other guys. They were streaky.
Yeah, they were. I mean, without Williams on the court, our zone was even better because Ewing was surrounded. I still remember seeing Ewing in that game with 3 guys around. Like Gary McLain did a good job from the top in the zone.
Yeah.
When the ball went in, he came down from the top, and we had 3 guys around him. He literally could not function with the. You know, he had to get rid of it. And then when the ball went up, we didn't give him any lobs, alley-oop. The key to the game was, I thought, we held Ewing down.
Yeah.
In the second half, he only had 2 points in the last 12 minutes. Ewing had a very average game for a guy of his ability. Eddie outplayed him. I thought that was the key to the game.
Well, there's no question getting Georgetown to play in the half court against the different looks. I mean, I should have brought the halftime chart. I think I still have it. I mean, we had 22 defenses listed, but there was actually one called 1C special where Harold Jensen, you talk about Gary McLain going down, but when Harold Jensen was in the game, when the ball went to the wing, sometimes Harold Jensen from the 2-guard spot would go down in front Ewing. So getting them in a half-court game, and, you know, because Georgetown's so athletic, you know, if they had been able to get the ball out and run and then crash the boards, but, you know, controlling the tempo, I mean, going in, I mean, Mitch, when you think about the keys of the game that you would emphasize, you know, in terms of, you know, one-shot game, you know, the tempo. And the part about turnovers didn't work out, but I don't know. It just amazing.
You guys watch a lot of games now. If you watch that game now, it looks so. The game is played within a 20-foot area now.
Right.
Now the freaking whole court is being used by everybody. It's amazing. It looks so different than basketball today. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
And no three-point line.
They had David Wingate can shoot it, Michael Jackson can shoot it, Reggie can shoot it, right? The issue, though, don't you think, Steve, in our earlier conversation that, listen, there's a lot of pressure on them.
Oh, no. As the game went on.
Now that shot becomes monumental.
As the game went on, they got tighter and tighter and tighter.
100%.
Especially, they did things totally out of character. They held the ball, you know, and they had Billy Martin on the top. Billy doesn't play out there. Billy's a wing player.
They threw the ball off Michael Jackson. Didn't he throw the ball off Michael Jackson's leg?
Yeah, he threw it off his feet. Yeah, I mean that. Billy still has angst over that. He still has nightmares over that.
That might have been the play of the game.
I think it was because it wasn't too long after that Jensen made the shot, and that was that. You know. It was, that, and they let us hold the ball at the end of the half, which I couldn't believe they let us do that.
Yeah, they
You
did.
know?
Yes.
So
But Sonny,
things
Sonny,
like
to your
that
point,
was,
Sonny, to your point about, remember now, there was no 45-second shot clock. We had played with the
Right.
clock during the regular season. So in the tournament, there's no shot clock, which Rolly was a master at the end of the game if we had a lead. We worked a lot on this.
Right.
You got enough. We got enough spread. He would go to that every time. So once we got a lead in the tournament late against those teams that hadn't been used to playing against the spread, I remember the Carolina game, they had no idea. I mean, we were literally against Carolina laying the ball up. They were big and slow. But the point is, no shot clock, no 3-point line, right? So we were packing it in, and they were hesitant. Like you said, I remember Wingate wouldn't take 15-footers. He was really tentative. Like on the wing, and he was, tentative as hell.
Right.
I think those
And without
two
a
things
shot clock, more time, more indecision, more
shot
doubt.
clock would have
Right?
killed us. Yeah, that would have hurt us. Yeah.
killed us. Yeah.
So Sonny and
Not-
Chuck, Sonny, how could there not be a technical foul though? So we think the game's over. There's 10
I'm
seconds
just going to
left.
ask you that.
10 seconds left. We're up
Yeah.
4. Rolly's in the huddle. You can't lose the game. The game is over. Let them score, and the game's over. Because at that time, the clock doesn't stop when the ball
Right.
goes to the basket. So then we let them go in for a layup, and then Ewing punches the ball up to the second mezzanine level.
They did that all season long, though, Marty. They did that.
I mean,
when they
why
ran
there
out of
wasn't a tech?
timeouts.
I guess they're not
Nope.
going to call it tech, but
Nobody
anyway,
had the
that-
guts to make that
It
call.
absolutely
It
was a technical foul. Bobby
Yeah.
It
Dykler
happens-
was the guy under the basket.
But that was
And
the
I was
strategy
so-
all year.
all of a sudden you go from games over to we have to inbound the ball. I
Yeah.
mean, 5
Yeah.
seconds, steal, whatever it is. But I mean, it's just funny how there were just so many moments in that game. Nice dog, by the way, Mitch. What the hell
Yeah,
is
this
that?
was my guy. This is our Pyrenees. Yeah. He's our guy.
By the way, I don't know
But
if you
yeah.
guys know it, but Mitch lives on a farm. He has all kind of
Yeah.
animals. I don't know if you realize that. You would never have thought Mitch Buonaguro from New York City would be living north of Albany, acres of land,
All I
on a
saw as a kid
lawnmower,
was
smoking a
concrete.
cigar.
That's crazy.
But I remember that being the Georgetown strategy. They couldn't get in their press certain times, so they would slap the ball, or if they ran out of timeouts, they would hit the ball away. They got warnings after warnings. They never would call for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Broadnack's pulling Presley over him, so to look like he took
Oh
it.
yeah.
That was,
That
you're
was-
right, Chuck.
It was
That
pretty nuts
definitely
too.
a foul.
Yeah.
Right.
That was a smart
they-
play.
At what point did you guys realize and say to yourself, "Hey, we got a shot here. We could win this thing"? At what point in the game?
For me, Chuck, it was halftime. I thought if we were close at the half, the way we were playing in the tournament, the second half, we were good late every game. I mean, if we were in the game late with the whole, holding the ball, plus we were a good free throw shooting team. I thought
Yeah.
we made a lot of free throws in the tournament, clutch free. So I think our free throw shooting, Rolly's ability to, really at the end of the game with the spread, we got enough. And then just like Sonny, you made a good point. They got tentative. And Ewing was not
Yeah.
dominating. Eddie was playing him even, or I thought Eddie outplayed him. Eddie outplayed Patrick Ewing in that game, in my opinion. I mean, he only had 14 points for the game.
Yeah.
He didn't dominate. So we had all that going for us. And Marty, you made a good point, Chuck. Your play at the end of the half, and Rolly got really fired up. I think that carried over to the team. I really think because we started the second half well. We went up 6. Then we didn't start the second. I think we started the second half well.
Yeah.
We got a little lead, and that put more pressure on him as the game went on.
We went 9 for 10 in the second half, Mitch. That's unbelievable. 10 shots. That's all it took for the whole second half.
I think Steve said it earlier that with the whole gym behind us. I agree with Mitch. Going into halftime, I felt really good in terms of that. If we can come out and maintain our calmness or whatever, poise. The gym was going to get behind us. The crowd was going to get behind us, and they were going to get. I mean, who knows what was going to happen? But the closer it is, the later it goes. I think the pressure really goes to the on Georgetown.
Steve, I got to ask you. This is your first experience in college basketball, and literally, at what point are you like, this is surreal. Like
when we beat North Carolina, and I'm calling all my buddies back in Washington High saying, I can't believe this. I couldn't get a job anywhere last year. I'm going to Final Four. The year before, I had people at my house to watch it. And if somebody told me, hey, I'll give you a ticket next year to go, I would have gone crazy. I'm sitting on the bench. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Hey, Steve.
Unbelievable.
Steve, has there ever been a high school coach who won a state championship the following year, won a national championship?
I have no idea.
You might be the guy.
Not be, Marty. You might be. You
might be the
only
guy.
one.
Talk about it. Now, Marty and Mitch had paid their dues. They had been there 8 years, working 24 hours a day. Mitch went to saw John Pannone play like 31 times in Hartford, Connecticut, then had to be in practice the next day. I walked in and like all of a sudden, and I even said, I'm never saying this to Coach Bass. We're walking to the press conference afterwards. I said, Coach, what's so hard about this? I was joking, and he hit me in the arm so hard. I swear to God, I got black and blue. So yeah, I mean, it was surreal to say the least.
Yeah, and then it was mayhem.
Get some numbers from you, Steve.
Yeah. And then it was mayhem when that buzzer went off. I don't think I've ever had that up to that point in my life. I've never cried out of sheer joy in my whole life, like we did that night. I mean, that was nuts. And then following that, all the did you guys did you know when we got on the plane going home that there was going to be a parade as soon as we got off the plane, or was that something that was done by the city? Did Coach have anything to say about that, or how did that work?
I don't remember him saying anything, Marty.
I had no idea.
I had no idea. I think big surprise.
I'll tell you what, I got to tell you guys one thing. What freaked me out completely was after we beat Carolina and we walked into the field house, that place was...
That was the best.
I couldn't believe that. I could not believe what that was.
Yeah. That was the absolute best. I think there was more people in the field house than went to school there at Villanova.
It sure looked like it.
Looked like it. Yeah, right. Unbelievable.
So, Chuck, the only mistake I made right after the game, I say this half kiddingly. So the buzzer goes off. We do the hug. I go to the stands. My sister and brother had driven from Maine to Lexington. So I had family there. So I went to the stands and to Denise and everything. So I missed all the great photos with you and the team and Mitch and everything. If I had to do it over again, I think I would have went with the team and then come back and said hi to my family. It's sort of funny. Yeah.
Immortality first, Marty.
Well, let me tell you, my big mistake that night was we're all in Rolly's suite party, and there was 1 million people in the suite, and Rolly's giving out cigars, and I had never smoked a cigar in my life.
Oh, no.
And I smoked a cigar that night and got sick as a dog and had to leave his room at like 2 a.m. My wife still is mad at me to this day that I cut short the party that night.
So, Steve, another thing about that party afterwards that it was again, this is corny stuff, but so I'm sitting there with Denise and Paul Cormier and his wife, Susan. And there was a part of me that I was so excited, and yet, so Paul had made the decision a year before to go to Dartmouth, which elevated me and gave you the opportunity. So there's Paul probably thinking, why couldn't I waited 1 more year? I could have been a national champion, So we're celebrating, but I sort of felt like, sorry, Corms, it's the way it goes, man. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
I got a couple more, and then we'll get this wrapped up, but first, talk about meeting President Reagan, what that was like for you guys. I mean, I've only been in awe a couple of times from meeting somebody in person, but when you're standing there with the guy, you can hardly speak when you're shaking hands with this guy. You guys feel the same way? Was that something that is one of your highlights of people that you've met?
Well, I mean, for me, my situation was I had gone to the Dapper Dan, I think, we're recruiting. May have been Doug. I forget who the recruiting was. So I didn't go with the team down to DC. I got to DC separately. So just getting to the gate, getting cleared and going in. I mean, I was totally in awe. And then Reagan, I mean, Mitch is a history guy. I'm a history guy. I mean, in fact, I think the three of us follow history pretty good. But Ronald Reagan, to me, was bigger than life. He was not that he was an actor and everything, but I really respected him. He was such a great speaker. He carried himself so well. So the opportunity to shake his hand and to actually, I was standing next to Steve, Harriet, and Jake at the time. So it was memorable for me from the standpoint of meeting Reagan, being next to like Steve and Jake and the wives. It was a very memorable moment for me.
The White House. I mean, think about it. You know what I mean? We went to the you see teams every year going to the White House that win, NBA championships or whatever. We went to the White House. I mean,
I know, right?
Just think about it. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, we got a picture from there, and it's the picture that you're talking about, Marty. And that's it. What can you say? You were at the White House because you won a national championship. Yeah. Thank you, Rolly Massimino. That's what I say always. Thank you, Rolly Massimino.
That's it.
Yeah, I didn't go. I was named that day the coach at Fairfield.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It was really bad. I mean, I apologize to this day, Rolly. I mean, I've apologized to Rolly, but they did we didn't know. We didn't find out about the White House trip until. Right away. I mean, it was
the
like
day before. I was in the conference.
I couldn't believe he didn't go.
I
couldn't believe Mitch didn't go. That was messed up.
And
you should have been there.
I should have. Fairfield scheduled the press conference. They had 100 media coming, and it was a big deal. And to this day, I really regret it. I mean, I just went to see the movie Reagan.
Oh, did you?
I was just going to mention that movie's out right now.
Were we in it? I'm just curious. Did they have our team in there? No. Huh?
Yeah, everybody but Mitch was in it.
Everybody but Mitch. So okay, two things left, and then I'll cut you guys loose. First thing I got to ask you guys about is our good luck charm, our leprechaun. I can't not talk about the game and talk about '85 without talking about Jake. Jake Nevin was, as you guys all know, was a very, very special guy to anybody who put a uniform on at Villanova and or was a coach. Was part of that basketball team. The guy was absolutely magical, and give me a quick story or thought about the Jaker during that run.
Well, my Jake Nevin story is, Chuck, as you guys know, Marty, Steve, he didn't like to go to bed at night. He never slept, Jake. He was on the road when Sonny, he was a night owl. Right. What he would do with me is he would get my hotel key somehow. And, Rolly we would always go out and have a meal. So I get back to the hotel, we'd get back around 10:30, 11, and, we get settled in and we go back to Rolly's room. So I think this was not during the tournament. This is maybe the year before, but I get back to the hotel room and the lights are, I turn the light on, and there he is sitting there smoking a cigar. He loves cigars. Sitting in my room, I was scared. Like, I don't know who this is. I thought it was like a burglar or something. But he's sitting there in a chair smoking a cigar, and he goes to me, "Go check your sport coat." So I go in, I check and there's like 5 cigar butts in there that he put in there. All mushy that was in my sport coat. And he goes, "By the way, I hope I didn't ruin your sport coat." But those are the things he did. He never slept. I loved him. He and I got along great. The other thing he used to do, we'd go into a restaurant with him. I don't know if you remember this, Marty, Steve, but you go in a restaurant with him, and he'd go to the waitress, "Hon, that one earring looks nice," and the waitress would grab her other ear. Do you remember that? I mean,
one of his favorites.
Yeah.
But he was the best. And I'll tell you what, that was the other storyline. The kids were really playing for him that year when he got ALS.
Yeah.
In '85. Yeah. They were playing, our guys were playing for more than just the tie. You know that, Chuck.
Yeah.
I mean, Jensen, before he made the free throws. Do you remember Jensen before he made the big free throws against Jordan, went over and kissed his head? Yeah. Remember that? He went over to the bench. Sonny, he went over. He had 2 big free throws, and he went over and it was a timeout, a quick timeout. He went over and kissed his head. I mean, they were playing for Jake.
Yeah.
They were also playing for Al Severance, who died. That was an incredible story.
Morning
Al
of the game.
Severance died.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
2 legendary Villanova people. I mean, they were legends. So I think everything added up with that run. You know, it was just like one thing after another just made it such a,
Perfect storm.
no.
Good, Mart.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch didn't steal it, but my memory of Jake specifically with the NCAA game was, you know, Harold Jensen going over and giving him a kiss, tell him that he loved him. You know, that was very very heartwarming. The only quick Jake story was actually right after we won the championship, and so Steve and I were together at our house in Penn Wynn with our wives, and if you recall, after winning the championship, the markability of Rollie was big, and the New Jersey Nets came after Rollie strong, and so he actually accepted. I think during the night, the public relations department had printed everything. You know, so Steve and I are at our house. We're wondering, you know, what our futures were. I thought I was going with Rollie to the Nets. Steve wasn't sure, and then the next morning. So we went to bed thinking that Rollie was gone. And then the next morning, Rollie had announced that he was staying at Villanova. And he said, you know, who knows the total truth? You never know. But he said, and I believe him, that one of the factors for him to stay was because of Jake. You know, as you know, he and Jake were very close. And, you know, Jake passed the following year.
December,
But that was my last remembrance of Rollie and being involved with Steve and Jake being a part of that whole, you know, your life can change for so many different reasons. So I love Jake. Jake and I were very close.
Yeah. So to end this, guys, talk about one last thing, one takeaway from the tournament and from Coach Massimino, working with Coach. The hours, I don't think anybody realizes how hard you guys worked, how much film you guys watched, and all the different things that you did, and the hours that you put in, and it had to take sacrifices on your family and your spouses and stuff. You know, talk about Coach Mass and one last remembrance of the 85 group.
I'll go ahead. So, you know, for me, I'd been there for 8 years, and we had been knocking on the door. We'd been to 5 Elite Eights. You know, all the hard work and everything. For me, I just enjoyed it so much. Like Denise was chasing her dream, I was chasing my dream. It didn't matter. 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. shooters, lunch, film. I was in heaven. Sort of like Steve saying, you know, when you come to Villanova, oh my goodness. And so I didn't really. Sure, he was tough. I mean, he didn't. Whether you're a coach or a player, that he was so demanding, but he was very formative of my life. You know, I think back. I'm 71 now, but I was a young guy. I was like, I don't know, 24, 25, 26, whatever it was, and so I owe so much to being able to be there at that time. The memories, you know, they last till today. And I'm forever grateful to being happy to be a part of the Villanova family. And that when I think of the championship, I just think of just how well deserved it was for Rollie. You know, my last soapbox thing, for him not to be in the Hall of Fame is one of the biggest disgraces ever. But everybody that knows basketball knows that it's not just that perfect game, the championship game, it's just everything he stood for. And again, I'm just appreciative of having been a part of it.
How about you, Lap?
You know, everything that I learned in basketball was from him in terms of how to run a program, how to be with the players, how to scout, how to do everything there was to do. And he was an emotional guy, and he is so underrated as a coach. And I don't know why. And I'm going to piggyback on what Marty just said. And I don't want to say he should be in there at the expense of. So there are people in there, I think, that like they say, well, you only got 550 Division I wins. Yeah, okay, but we have high school coaches in there who have no Division I wins. So I mean, think about things like that. That this man was a tremendous coach. He was a throwback. You know what I mean? He could have coached in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 90s. He was that kind of coach. He analyzed everything in the game. He loved his players. It meant so much to him to have the most important thing I think a coach can have is blind faith. And I say this all the time. If your players don't question anything that you do and have that blind faith, now you got something special. And he was a guy, it was a gift. He knew how to get blind faith from everyone around him. And so, there's no doubt that I would not have had the opportunities to do the things that I did in my life in basketball, to think that grew up in Washington Heights, and I was a half-ass Division III player, and I got to coach at one of the best basketball schools ever in Villanova, and now do what I'm doing in TV. It's all because of him.
Yep.
Don't you think, to your point though, that from listening to this, that Rollie had that same blind faith in his guys?
Well, it's a little different for a coach, but he had confidence in him. Don't get me wrong.
That deep belief, like
he had a belief in them. There's no doubt. But to get 12 people to all have blind faith in you, it's probably a little harder to get. You know what I mean?
But he had his key players. Don't you think his key players felt that way?
Yeah, of course. No question they had confidence in him. Almost. Marty and Mitch both said it. They knew when they got a scouting report that thing was on the money. And Rollie knew these guys are going to be able to execute this scouting report.
Yeah.
My take, Chuck, would be simply, when I think of Rollie, when he started at Villanova, it wasn't easy. Remember, he started out, he had 2 losing seasons. People were not happy with him. So then you go fast forward 10 years to the 85. When he started, it was hard. He had to take over from Jack Kraft. Rollie was a grinder. He worked really hard. He got good players. He could coach. He had coached in high school. It's a feel-good story. It's a great story. And he ran a clean program. His players graduated. He was very big on education. No one ever said anything bad about the type of program he ran. It was a great story for college athletics and for the country. I mean, this was a team that the kids were recruited the right way. They graduated. We didn't have a great arena. We didn't have a ton of money. And here we were on top of the college basketball world because of a grinder, because of a guy who started in high school, didn't have a great start at Villanova. We built it up little by little. We had a lot of success, in that period of the 80s. And in my mind, him not being in the Hall of Fame is a travesty. To me, when you look at a Rollie Massimino, what you got to say is what he stood for, his value system. Any Hall of Fame or anybody that's a coach or anybody that's on a board, the things that he stood for are the things that you should teach every coach, right? He had integrity, he had work ethic, he had knowledge of the game. He valued education. It was a model program. Everybody in the country was so happy when Rollie won it. It's not always like that. You don't want to see a dishonest guy win who cheats and gets players. I mean, that's not what amateur athletics is about. He did it the right way. There's something to be said for that. And his best friend, one of his best friends, was Bob Knight. And Bob Knight loved Rollie. They talked all the time. And why? Because their value systems were aligned. Knight didn't cheat. He hated guys that cheat. He hated guys that didn't do it the right way. He understood what Rollie did, how he built the program, doing it the right way. He admired him. And he wouldn't just play anyone. When he played us in Madison Square, you think he played anybody? I mean, he had great respect for. Those are the type of people that respected Rollie. And I'm sure in the Big East, the Carnesecas and the Boeheims and the Calhouns, they're all upset he's not in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's one of the original guys. So to me, like what Marty said, it's a travesty. Look at the type of coach he was, not only in terms of wins and losses, but what he represented and what he did with his play, how connected he was to and what his players did after they graduated. Look at all those Villanova guys. They're all successful guys. Most, I mean, not like in anything, not all of them are going to be super successful, but he had great kids at Villanova.
Yeah.
And just on my thing is just on the NCAA alone, on those 3 weeks of coaching, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Just on that accomplishment.
Yep. Yeah. Well, guys, I have to say this was a lot of fun. thank you so much for joining us and reliving the 40-year-old run to the championship. You know, we don't get to do that very often. We see each other a lot and we talk a lot, but we don't get to sit down and talk about what happened and get your perspective on things. So I really appreciate it. I still can't believe it's 40 years ago. Lap, you still look like you did when we were playing. You're the only one of the four of us, though.
He's got all his hair, man. I mean,
Yeah, you're the only one, Lap. So you did good. Well, thanks again. Thanks again. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging with us tonight on the Big East Rewind. Really appreciate it.
Great being
Thanks
with all
for
you
letting
guys.
me.
Thanks, Sonny.
Thanks
Thanks,
for letting me be
Daryl.
here.
Thanks a lot,
Good,
Sonny.
good
Thanks,
seeing you,
Chuck.
Steve.
Right,
and Mitch.
guys.
Take
See
care.
you guys.
The Big East Rewind was produced and directed by Nick Chico Kors and Daryl Gurney. Check us out on all things social media by putting Big East Rewind in the search bar. And check out our website for all things Big East at www.bigeast.com. Thanks a lot for joining us and have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, guys.